Alright, in this video, unlike the last video I did going over the bayonet, this one right here, I'll go over the 1958 CETME, known as the CETME Model 58. CETME was a company in Spain that after World War II acquired a lot of the German weapon makers, and they ended up coming up with different weapons and designs for the future of modern warfare on the Spanish side, which kind of tied into Germany. You also had FN and places like Colt and other places that were in the weapons development, but the CETME company came up with the Model 58, and the Model 58 ended up getting adopted by the Germans as the G3, also known as the HK91. This design and style with the roller delayed locking system and everything also worked its way into things like the MP5 and other German machine guns and pistols and stuff like that that kind of became popular in the 60s and 70s, and to this day is still highly sought after and liked. Granted, some of the stuff might be a little outdated. The manual of arms might be a little bit different than what people are used to, but no one can deny that it was definitely a platform that stood the test of time, and a lot of people that end up buying these like what they do, even though there are limitations for modern combat. They're still fun weapons to have. Let's go inside, do a little bit more of an overview of this, and we'll do a disassembly. And if you're into actual Heckler & Koch HK91s, like this right here, or the SP5s, like this one right here, SP5Ks, give me a like, give me a follow. I'll end up showing content like this on my channel. The HK slap, gotta love it. Alright, so after World War II, the Spanish military ended up getting CETME. It was kind of done through the French, long story there, but basically the Spanish government set up the CETME to do research and development for rifles and everything. And what they came up with was the CETME rifle, and eventually it became the G3, which is popularly known as for a military fighting arm, and then also the HK91. This one right here is HK91. This one right here is the CETME. This one's Century Arms. This one's HK. Neither one of these has a paddle shifter, more American style made, which the paddle release for the magazine is better, I think, overall. But the way it became known as the G3, just to go over a little story with it, is the German military, after World War II, wanted to restructure and everything as far as the West Germans and everything. And everyone from the Mauser factory kind of came over to CETME and started designing stuff. So a lot of the famous German weapon manufacturers were over working for the CETME place with their designs, blueprints, and stuff like that. The German military was looking for a new firearm. The CETME rifle came out in 1958 and was being distributed and everything. The German military looked at 4 different rifles that they wanted in the 7.62 caliber that had 800 to 1,000 yard accuracy. The first one they looked at was the FAL, that was known as the G1. SIG had, I believe it was the 510, and the SIG was known as the G2. The G3 was the CETME rifle that they came up with, and obviously ended up being adapted. And the G4 was the AR-10 in 308. For those who don't know, the AR-10 came out before the AR-15. But this rifle right here is what was adopted, and let's go into a little bit of the features on it. All right, we have the muzzle with a compensator flash hider built onto it. Tapered barrel. We have the bayonet lug on this one right here that's attached. We have the famous HK style sight with the circle on it, and then we have a charging handle here. The charging handle on this one's made out of metal. Some are made out of plastic. It gives you leverage because of the way the piston and the locking system is. So when you first pull it back to open it, it kind of unlocks the system, and then you can pull it back. See how it works here? And then lock it to the rear position. So it's kind of back and over, and that's how it ends up locking. And then to release it, you have the famous HK slap that drives it forward. Over here we have the receiver area. The upper part right here is the actual receiver. The trigger guard and group is completely separate from it. Some of them will have a pin and a paddle shifter down here. This one doesn't have that. You have your selector lever, up is fire. down is safe. When they made the G3s and some of the military ones with the different selectors, the positions would be a little bit different, so it varies from each one. On the rear here, we have the rear sight. This one right here, I don't know how well it'll show up, but there's clamps to mount an optic, but they failed to put the lever that holds it, so if you end up shooting this one, the optics will slide forward. And this one here just has a cheap welded on rear sight. Most of them will have those famous HK rotary castle style sights on the back. This one doesn't. And then you have the buttstock with a piston and everything, and it's going to be hard to slide the buttstock over, but there's different variations of buttstocks you can put on these. They're kind of neat. These are shrunk down into 5.56, into 9mm, and all kinds of calibers, so it's kind of a neat revolutionary design with the roller lock system. Let's go in and start doing some disassembly. On most of these, the front hand guard's going to come off pretty easy. Just push out a pin, then pull the front part down, and this part right here kind of sits in there, so you're basically pulling down and forward, and it pops right out. Next to take apart is going to be the back buttstock here. This rear pin has a hard time coming out, so I kind of pre-started it, but the two pins back here get removed. Flip it over and show you real quick. Once the two pins come out, you can pull this back piece off. And this one right here, it's kind of hard, so I'm going to have to tap it a little bit. All right, and then after tapping on it quite a bit, you can end up getting this part right here to slide out, and it'll come out with the recoil rod assembly and everything. Once you have the rear stock off, you want to grab with the trigger group, kind of pull down and back, and this will allow you to completely remove the trigger group from it. After you remove the trigger group, you want to reach up to where the charging handle is to unlock it, which is that first stage, and then just pull it all the way back. You can slide it forward once you're done doing that. Tilting the rifle, we can slide the bolt assembly and everything out through the back of it. This right here is what the receiver tube looks like. Basically a stamped sheet metal. Has the barrel attached to it with the tube and charging handle and going to the flash suppressor. But the main serial number part of it is going to be right here on the tube, and this is all a welded piece that's on here. This right here is the bolt carrier group. It's completely hollow going through it. There is an area that the piston rod sits in, but it doesn't come all the way forward, so it kind of stops around here to allow it to cycle and everything. These are the roller locks that are on it. You can see on the side, kind of stick out a little bit when it's in a lock position. Then when it's unlocked, it's going to be pushed in. I'll go over taking this apart. It's a little bit confusing here. There's a spring tension underneath here and everything. But if you want to disassemble it, the way to do it is basically to compress this bolt right here in. It'll click like that, and then you can end up twisting it to disassemble it. I'm going to get a set of pliers real quick, but basically it's going to rotate towards where the ejection or firing port side is. Yeah, actually there we go. That one twisted a little easier than I thought. Got to do it one more time. Kind of a pain. There we go. Basically, once it gets inverted upside down, then it can slide out. You can see there's a slot right here for where the firing pin retaining thing goes. So the firing pin retaining part, it rotates and comes out. You'll see there's a notch on it right here. You can pull the firing pin and the spring out, and the notch that's on here lines up with a little cutout in here, so it kind of goes into there, rotates, and then when you end up rotating it around, it'll lock it in place. But that's how that ends up coming apart. And then if you want, you can separate the springing part from it. And this right here is the bolt thing. The biggest thing is the rollers here. There's a pin punch and some other stuff. The extractor on it is needed more on the MP5s and stuff, but on the G3 CETMEs, the extractor's pretty good overall on it for functioning and working without issues. The rollers, depending on the headspace, could need to be replaced, but that's a whole nother issue I might get into some other time if people have questions about it. Try and go over the reassembly of the bolt. Put the spring in. Put the spring pin back in here. There's a backside where it comes out at. Like I said, you can take this rotating part right here, push it in, and it'll rotate over. I like to rotate it over to the left. Then we have the bolt carrier part right here. When you put it in, like I said, when we pulled it off, it was upside down. So the way that it's upside down right here is going to be how it's going to go back in for the reassembly. Slide it in, rotate it, it's going to kind of click and lock. You need to rotate it again, then pull it forward. There's a little notch here. You got to kind of control how you pull it forward here and twist. It can be kind of hard. Sometimes I end up using the vise pliers for it, but let's see if I can get it without it. Let me grab the pliers. All right, then using the pliers, we're going to rotate it and lock it into place. So basically what you're doing is you're putting it in upside down and you're rotating it around 180 degrees so that it locks into place. You'll have a gap like this, and the locking rollers are going to be flush. So they're not going to sit out or anything like that. If you push it back in, it'll pop them out. That's kind of how that angle is on the firing pin retaining part. Sometimes if people mess up and they push it on the retaining part and everything, some people will turn the bolting around backwards and they'll kind of jam and force it in this way, and it'll unlock the rollers and everything. But like I said, if you know what you're doing and you assemble the bolt properly, you're good. Just don't push in and collapse it again. Otherwise, you may end up having to turn it around backwards like this and force it in, but I don't recommend doing that. That's just a tip or technique some people use. All right, if you have your bolt back together with the rollers the way they normally are, it'll basically just slide right in the grooves that are there. And reassembly is basically the reverse order. Go ahead and put the trigger part back in and put it all back together. When putting it back together, you do want to make sure that the trigger group is put forward and that this bottom part right here is flush up all the way. That way when you go to insert your buttstock and everything, all these parts need to kind of line up and everything. When dealing with the CETMEs, not necessarily the HKs and everything, but the CETME or the import ones, a lot of times people can have a hard time trying to charge it when it's on safe. One thing I recommend is putting it on fire, then coming back and charging it. If you want to let it go forward, you can let it go forward, then put it back on safe, and then from there it'll be easier to charge the charging handle when you want to chamber around and everything. But a lot of people sometimes will have issues with these and everything, so with the weapon unloaded, have it on fire, charge it, put it on safe, and then it'll be easier to charge the charging handle. I think it has to do with the trigger and hammer pack being forward all the way. It's easier if it's set on fire to charge it and then have it ready and then put it on safe. But that's just a little tip that I've seen. I've seen a lot of people talk about online how they have to kind of mortar it and slam it on the ground and do stuff to get it to charge. Put it on fire, charge it, then put it on safe, and you're going to have the hammer back and everything's ready already, rather than fighting against the trigger pack inside. The magazines they make for these, they have aluminum ones that are light. They kind of wear a bit. They're a little bit cheaper sometimes. And then you have the steel ones. They're a little bit durable, weigh quite a bit more. Then you also have the 5-round steel. I think they might make them in aluminum too, but 5-round ones are called the Garrison ones. They're also used in like the PSG-1 sniper rifle, but there's different variations and stuff. They kind of go in at an angle and push back to lock. Same way with like the MP5s and stuff. You got to kind of push it in and lock them into place. But overall, the magazines aren't that expensive, readily available. Been making them since the 60s, tons of surplus ones from different wars and stuff like that. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't given me a subscribe yet, make sure you subscribe. You don't have to watch all my videos, but there might be some stuff that comes out there you want to see, so subscribe and help my channel. I appreciate it. Cav Cop out.